Hey there, fellow engineers and home labbers. FE Engineer here, and today I'm going to go through a bunch of the most commonly used Linux commands, as well as very brief descriptions of what they do, how to use them, where they're useful. Let's get started. You'll see that right here I have just SSH'd into one of my servers. It's basically a test server. It's running Ubuntu 22.04. And everything we're going to do from inside of here. One of the most commonly used commands in Linux is simply ls. It is effectively how you list out all of the files and directories in the location that you are currently in. Right now, you'll see this tilde right here, and this tilde means that I am in my home directory. So when I list out all of the files and folders that are in my home directory, you'll see we have get, Minecraft BE, and Samba Share. That is what I have in there, and you can also use other flags. Flags are things that modify a command. So ls is the command, and I can use -la, and this will give me a lot more information about each file and directory, and it will also show hidden files and hidden directories like the .cache directory. For my color scheme right here, blue stands for directories and white stands for files. So that helps you to differentiate. Over on this side with the ls-la, we can see what permissions files and or directories have, whether they are read, write, execute, and D stands for directory. So that's a little bit of the ls command, which you will use all the time. When moving around inside of Linux, you will often use what is called cd. It stands for change directory. And so if we want to go backwards, we will use cd space ... and it will take us backwards a directory. And if we ls, which we already went over, we'll see that the only directory inside of home is John. So I can then cd John, and now I'm back exactly where I started. If you are ever using Linux and you are confused why people seem to not have to type everything, let's take a look. So I have a Minecraft BE directory. If I wanted to go into it, I could cd space and then type out Minecraft BE and include a /, and I will cd right into it if I hit enter. However, there is a sneaky way that people avoid typing a lot. So if I just cd mi and then hit the tab key, there is only one possible finish because there is only one possible thing that starts with mi. And so cd space m or mi and then hit the tab key and it will just type out the rest for you. And it knows that this is a directory, so it automatically added the / at the end. If we want to create a file, just a completely empty file, what we will normally need to do is use sudo. Sudo is a way of elevating your permissions. By default in Linux, you have permissions to do things only inside of your own directory. So /home, /username, inside of there, you can effectively do whatever you want and you do not require sudo. When you are doing anything outside of your home directory, you will frequently need sudo in order to modify just about anything or to add anything or install anything. Most people tend to almost write sudo just as a force of habit. It's somewhat not common for you to not need sudo. And if you do not include sudo, you may very well be able to go and view a file, but you will not be able to edit it. Anyway, in order to create a file, we are going to run the touch command. And so we sudo touch, and then we're going to call this myfile.txt. So Sudo gives us elevated permissions. Touch is the command we want to run, and touch effectively just stands for create a file. And then the file name we are going to use is myfile.txt. Hit enter. Since we are using sudo, it wants our password. So we'll put in the password, and then you'll see we are back to just a command prompt. If we type ls though, you will see there is now a file called myfile.txt. Since we just made a file, let's take a look at creating a directory. If you want to create a directory, what you are going to do is run sudo, because we will need elevated permissions, and then mkdir, which stands for make directory, and then put a space, and then whatever you want the directory name to be. My directory. Hit enter. Type ls, and now you will see there is in fact a directory named my directory. So now that we have created a file, now that we have created a directory, you will find that maybe we want to move our file into that directory. What we can do is use the sudo command to elevate permissions. And since we want to move a file, it is simply mv, that stands for move, and then the file. So we are going to move myfile.txt, and we are going to move it into my directory. Hit enter. ls, since we moved it, we did not copy it, we simply moved it. You'll see that the file is in fact gone. If we cd into my directory, ls to take a look, we will see that myfile.txt is now located inside of my directory. We're going to cd ... to go back. I'm going to go ahead and create a handful of files and another directory, and we are going to go through and then copy them. The copy command is probably similar to what you may expect. We're going to use sudo to elevate our permissions. We're going to use cp to copy, and then we can choose a file. You'll see that inside of the directory that we are in, we have another directory inside of it called other directory, and we also have a set of files. So let's say we want to copy my file 2. We're going to type myf, hit tab, and it will finish the rest. And then because there are other possibilities like .txt or 2 or 3 or 4, it will simply stop there. And so we can then type 2, because let's say, for instance, we want to copy my file 2. And then we want to put where we want to copy it to. So we are going to copy my file 2 into other directory. Hit enter. Let's cd into other directory. Let's look, and my file 2 is in fact there. If we cd ... we can go back, and if we ls, we can see my file 2 is also there. So we have in fact copied it and not moved it. Now let's go ahead and make another directory. Sudo make directory, copy to me. And then let's cd into other directory. And one very common thing to do in Linux that most people should know, but effectively if you hit the up arrow, you will go back and you will see commands that you have already issued. It will store a lot of commands inside of it. So effectively, if there's a command that you ran that you want to run again, it's really easy to just hit the up and down arrows to go through them. So before I ran sudo touch myfile4 to create myfile4, but previously I did it in a different directory, so I can go ahead and do it again. And then since I just did that, I can effectively hit the up arrow to get the command again. I can hit the backspace and then change this to 3. Do it again. Do it again. And now if we look inside of other directory, we will see that I have my file 1, 2, 3, and 4. So inside of my directory, I have a copy to me directory and an other directory that has files. What I can do is I can sudo copy -r. -r typically means recursive, and recursive means that it will keep running the command as many times as it can inside of wherever you are. So if you want to copy a directory with all the files inside of it, you will need to use the sudo cp-r for recursive. And we're going to copy other directory, and we're going to copy it to cp to me. And so you can see how Linux commands typically get broken down. Sudo elevates our permissions. Cp is the command we want to run. -r is a flag to issue, to be more specific of the command we want to run, because we don't want to copy just the directory. We want to copy the directory and all the files in it. So sudo cp-r, we are going to copy other directory into cp to me. Hit enter. And if we look, nothing looks different from here, but if we cd into cp to me and ls, we now see that an entire directory, other directory, is copied inside of it. And if we cd into that and ls, we now see that we have a copy of other directory inside of cp to me. So this brings us up to a good point. How do you then delete things? Well, you delete things by removing them. So we're going to sudo rm, and if we wanted to remove myfile.txt, we could just type myfile.txt, and this says to sudo remove myfile.txt. Well, it removed that, but let's say that we want to remove a directory and all of the files inside of it. Well, this becomes very easy because just like before, we can add the -r flag to stand for recursive, and we can sudo remove everything inside of other directory. Hit enter, and now other directory and all files inside of it are in fact gone. Linux comes with a manual. Every single command, every single thing that is in Linux has a manual. And if you want to access the manual, all you type is man, standing for manual, and then the command that you want the manual for. So let's say we wanted the manual for copy. You'll see that this is, in fact, the copy command with its manual of all of the different flags and things like that you can use. You can use the up and down arrows to go through and see all of the different bits and pieces of it, all the different flags and modifiers. And then all you do is press Q to quit and exit. In Ubuntu, the repository that you typically will be installing things from is called apt or apt-get. And so if you want to install something, you type sudo apt, or you can also type sudo apt-get. Then the command you want is install. And then you type in the package name of whatever you want to install. And effectively, that is how you will install packages. If you want to remove packages, sudo apt-get remove, and then the package name. If you want to purge, and that effectively means to automatically delete all instances of, you can sudo apt-get purge, and then you can use wildcard modifiers. And if you are ever removing all versions of PHP, which is typically where I end up using this the most. You can do something like sudo apt-get purge php, and then PHP always comes in numbers. So PHP 7 dot whatever. This will automatically remove all versions of PHP 7 dot anything. So if there's 7.1, 7.2, it will remove all of them, including all of the extensions. Other apt-get commands that are particularly useful: sudo apt-get auto remove. This will automatically look at all the packages that you have installed and will figure out which ones you are not using and will automatically remove them for you. And then sudo apt-get auto clean. This will automatically clean up things that are not necessarily, again, being used. I'm going to actually run those, and then I'm going to run auto clean as well. The other apt-get functions that are exceedingly common virtually every single time when you go into any Linux machine, especially if you plan on doing any sort of real work, you want to sudo apt-get update. When you update, it effectively hits the internet, looks for updated versions of your packages, and that's all it does. It just looks at those versions and sees if there's newer versions. If you want to actually run an updater or an installer, the update command checks to see if there are new versions. The upgrade command actually installs newer versions. Another common command in Linux, exit. If you have SSH'd into a Linux machine or a virtual machine and you want to get out of it, exit is the command you are looking for. It will log you out. So I've gone ahead and logged out, and now I just logged back in. The SSH command to log into something is simply SSH, and then your username at the IP address. Other very common Linux commands: sudo shutdown. You do in fact need to have elevated privileges in order to shut down the machine. This does exactly what it sounds like. It will effectively tell it to shut down. It will give you, I believe, 30 seconds. If you want to skip that, you can type sudo shutdown now. I'm not going to do it because it will kick me out. But just so you know, that is how you tell it to shut down. But what you will likely use more often is reboot. So now that we have a handful of commands at our disposal, let's look at where we are. So let's go into cd my directory. Inside of here we have my file 2, 3, 4. Let's say I wanted to edit one of these files. The easiest way to edit files is typically going to be sudo nano. Nano is a type of actual editor. There's a couple that normally come installed on most Linux distributions. Nano and Vim are two of the most common. Personally, I prefer using Nano. I have used Vim. I didn't particularly love it, and I did like Nano. So if you want to edit a file, you type sudo nano and then the file name. And since we have myfile2, we'll just nano into sudo nano myfile2. Inside of the file, you will see it is in fact empty, and that's because when we created the file, we just effectively created a file with nothing in it. If we wanted to put something into it, we can in fact put, here is some text, and then for nano, when you want to exit out, you will hit the Control X. It will ask you if you want to save a modified buffer. This just means, do you want to save the file? Type yes. Then it will ask you, Do you want to change the file name since you are saving something different? Generally speaking, you probably do not want to change the file name, so you just hit enter. Other very common commands to potentially run: ping. Ping allows you to send a command, and this is useful inside of Windows as well. You can ping different IP addresses to see if you can get an internet signal from one to the other and receive a response. For me, my actual router sits at 192.168.0.1, and I am inside of a VM, and if I hit ping, you'll see that it will ping it with data and return a response. In order to stop ping, hit Control-C, and it will stop. And it tells us what the information we want to know. It sent 10 packets and it received 10. So there was no packet loss, and the time for each packet was literally under 1 millisecond each. If you are looking to figure out what version or where something lives, you can typically type which. This basically is asking what Python, what PHP. So we can type which PHP. And it tells us that the version of PHP being used lives at user bin PHP. And along with that, most commands have a -v that tells us the version. So PHP, the version being used is 8.2. After that, a very commonly used command is htop. And htop shows you all the processes that are running, how much memory you have, how much is in the swap file, and just effectively what is going on in your system. F10 will quit out of it. F9 allows you to kill processes, but generally speaking, unless you really know what you're doing, you probably won't want to mess with this too much. The only thing you may be interested in doing is just effectively getting an overall system view. Inside of here, you can see that root is running a bunch of things. Memcache is running. But other than that, there isn't too much interesting stuff going on in here, but this is effectively how you see how much CPU is being used, how much memory is being used. I'm just going to F10 and quit out of here. If you want to see how much disk space is available, you can simply type df. And this will tell you all the file systems and how much space is used and available. And you'll see that these numbers are pretty big, and it's not overly helpful because it doesn't really give you a good idea of what exactly is there. A very common flag to use with df is df -h. And -h stands for human readable. And that has made things much more, well, readable. You can see that the dev mapper Ubuntu VG Ubuntu LV has 19 gigabytes available and has used 9.1 gigabytes. Temporary file storage has 4 gigs available and has used just a few kilobytes. But this tells you effectively how much file space you have, how much is used, and how much is available. A very commonly used Linux command is also clear. Let's say you have a whole bunch of information on your screen and you just want to clean out your screen. Just type in clear and it will effectively remove all of the clutter, take you to the top, and have it just be empty. Another commonly used command in Linux is to figure out who are you exactly, and you can type whoami. And if the John at FE Engineer didn't give it away, typically you are going to be whatever your name is, or whatever user you've logged in as, and I logged in as John, but whoami will in fact tell you who you actually are at that moment. And if you are using different privileges or if you are changing users, this can occasionally become helpful and useful. A very commonly used command is unzip. Unzip does exactly what it sounds like. It will unzip a zipped file. Now in Ubuntu, unzip is not installed by default. So if you want to be able to use unzip, you would have to sudo apt-get install unzip. And after doing that, you will be able to unzip zipped files just using the unzip command. I want to keep these videos as short and digestible as possible. And so I think that is a pretty good set of commands for a absolute beginner user to learn how to move around the file system, how to view files, create files, create directories, edit files, move, copy, and remove files and directories, including using recursive so that you can remove all of something or move all of something, as well as some of the exceedingly common commands that you may need while navigating Linux. There are a handful of other commonly used commands that I'll go over in another video. They just are a little bit more complex, and I wanted to keep this video short and sweet. So for any beginner Linux users or people just getting into server administration and things like that, I hope this has helped you to learn how to do some very simple commands and how to navigate and use a couple different things that should help make things a bit easier for you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching my videos, home labbers and engineers. I create and edit all of these videos on my own, so any likes and subscribes will massively help out the channel and allow me to continue creating content to help people. If you got value out of this, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel to be notified when new content drops. If there's something I've not covered but you would like to see a video on it, please leave a comment down below. And again, a massive thank you to everyone. I hope you have a great day.